So let's talk about the role of the regional players here.
Yeah,
So obviously, this is the intersection of not only American foreign policy, the Europeans have a say in this, but you've got large powers like Iran that have a significant influence in this part of the world. Saudi Arabia has interests in this part of the world. There are other players who, certainly the neighbors, Jordan and Egypt,
yeah,
you mentioned them earlier. Can you talk a little bit about the current role that they are playing? Let's start with the
yeah,
regional. We'll take the U.S. in a separate question.
yeah, yeah.
For now,
Well,
the regional players, the immediate neighbors.
there's not much any of them can do because, first of all, um, no one is going to go to war with Israel or really provoke the Israelis. They're very strong militarily. No one wants to get into a war with the Israelis. The second thing is nobody much likes Hamas. Iran supports Hamas and gives them arms and money. And they appreciate Hamas's role as a kind of a hemorrhoid for Israel, if you can put it that way, as a really irritating problem, medical problem for the Israeli state. And so far, October 7th, from an Iranian point of view, has been almost all benefit with very little cost. But they're never going to confront Israel over Gaza. Neither Hezbollah, Iran's closest enemy and trump card in the region, whose role, now that the Syrian war is over, is to deter attacks on Iran's homeland and especially on its nuclear facility. They're not going to waste any of their trump cards on a place that is insignificant to them, Gaza. It has no historical, religious, cultural significance. It only pulls heartstrings among Palestinians, some Israelis, a lot of Israelis, and some Egyptians. That's it. Beyond that, no one cares about Gaza. It's just, you could say Nairobi or something. It's just meaningless. It's just a place somewhere else. Doesn't have any significance the way, say, East Jerusalem, occupied East Jerusalem and the holy places there would. Um, or for an ally, Hamas, which is fundamentally unreliable. Hamas is not a good fit in the Iranian alliance. Hamas is a Muslim Brotherhood party, Sunni fundamentalists. The Iranian alliance is almost entirely a Shiite alliance otherwise, and with the Alawite government of Syria an unhappy partner. Unhappy because Iran and Hezbollah have too much control in Syria now. But essentially, it's a Shiite alliance. And Hamas did break with Iran and Hezbollah and all the others during the Syrian war. They had to flee Syria. They had to flee. The Politburo of Hamas had been expelled from Gaza, ended up in Syria. They had to run away from Syria in 2012, leaving all their money, which is mainly in real estate, both party money and individual money, bound up in Syrian real estate. They just abandoned it, ran to Qatar, and which was a safe place for them, where they've been. I expect they'll have to leave Qatar sooner rather than later for various reasons. But the point is that Hamas broke with Iran and its allies. So Iran and Hezbollah are not going to go to war for an unreliable ally. It's a marriage of convenience. Um, so they will kind of give lip service and money and guns, but they're not going to put anything valuable on the line. They're trying desperately not to have an Israeli invasion of Lebanon, which would, I think, some Israelis hope, turn the tables and make post October 7 a strategic liability for Iran, not for Israel, by severely degrading Iran's major weapon in the region, which is not Hamas, but it is Hezbollah. Hezbollah is tightly integrated into the Revolutionary Guard Corps Quds Force, which is the expeditionary wing, which has close relations with Hamas, but Hamas will never obey them. Hamas does not take orders from them. They won't do it. They're not close enough. Hezbollah certainly does and will and would. And so they're not going to do that. Now, the other regional powers have little that they can do. The UAE has said that it would be part of a post-conflict stabilization force, but I think that's largely because they expect that won't happen, and also they know they can't do it on their own and no one else is biting. The Saudis have had the main important reaction, which is to up the price for a recognition of Israel. The Saudis were negotiating with the Americans on a new peace treaty, a new mutual defense treaty, modeled after the ones the U.S. signed in the 50s with South Korea and especially Japan. And that negotiation is concluded. It's been agreed. but it would need to be ratified by the Senate. And to get ratified by the Senate, Saudi Arabia would have to normalize with Israel. And before the Gaza invasion, Saudi Arabia was asking for a package of strengthening the PA, some good words, and putting a lot of money into the West Bank to really strengthen Fatah. And that's what they wanted from Israel. Expanded role from the PA. They wanted them to do things to make things better for Fatah and to put the finger on the scale of Palestinian politics, which was so evenly divided between Fatah and Hamas, squarely on the side of Fatah. That's one of the big reasons that Hamas acted on October 7th. It was related to these negotiations, as people think, but it was not, as they go on to speculate, designed to save Iran from this agreement. It was designed to save themselves from their rivals in Ramallah getting all this money and benefits and things. And the first real advance for Palestinians, as limited as it was going to be, in decades. And Fatah could have claimed credit for it. And among poor people, when you have food and medicine and healthcare for grandma and a new school for Johnny, you get a lot of brownie points. Right? You got to have that. Good ideas don't cut it in impoverished societies. You got to have some you got to have some patronage. You got to have some goodies. So they were going to get a bunch of it. And Hamas acted to stop that. Now with the war, the risk for Saudi Arabia has gone up. But like any commodity, the price is passed on to the consumer, right? And in this case, the consumer is Israel and the United States. And the price now involves Israel recognizing the Palestinian right to a state, which they have never done, going back to those letters I referred to, right, where the Palestinians did recognize Israel and Israel recognized the PLO as an interlocutor. The Saudis now want the Israelis to recognize formally that Palestinians have a right to a state. Not recognize a state, not demarcate its boundaries, nothing like that, just the right to a state. And they want Israel to commit, in theory at least, to getting into a process that is designed to eventually create a Palestinian state, establish one, without putting anything else on the line. And they want the Gaza war to end, but so do a lot of Israelis. Now, look, any normal Israeli government would jump at this, right? Because it would strengthen their ties with the U.S. It would create a ring of pro-American countries with relations with each other, beginning with the UAE swinging all the way around the Arabian Peninsula, past the great choke point of the Strait of Hormuz, all the way around the Arabian Sea, up into the Gulf of Aden and the Bab el-Mandab Strait, which is the second big choke point, and up the Red Sea into the Suez Canal. These are 3 of the 8 global maritime choke points of significance. That's a huge number. And they are the arteries of the Chinese economy. More than 45% of their imported oil comes through the Strait of Hormuz, and more than 40% of their manufactured goods aimed at Europe and North America go through the Bab el-Mandab Strait and the Red Sea. These are the arteries in and out of the heart of the Chinese economy. It's rather a big competitive advantage in global great power competition with China. So it's very valuable to the United States, but to solidify this ring, they need the Israelis and the Saudis to have relations with each other and get into a partnership to bring this all together. They would be the twin pillars. And it's not happening because the Israelis will not say yes, because they fear if they do agree to the Palestinian right to a state, this big plan of a greater Israel and annexing much or most of the West Bank becomes impossible. They will have committed not to do it, committed to the Americans, committed to the Saudis, gotten the Senate to ratify a new big treaty, the first big mutual defense treaty with the U.S. and a non-democracy since the Japan-South Korea ones in the 50s. It's a very big deal. The Israelis won't agree. And so this is where we are now. The Saudis are demanding something very valuable for the Palestinians, and the Israelis won't go for it. And it only demonstrates what I was saying about the way we're on a fast track to annexation and expulsion. Look, when human beings are in small groups and when they're individuals, they can often display enlightened self-interest. But when they're in big collectivities, identitarian collectivities like national groups, it is extremely rare. Most of the time, big groups of people behave like toddlers. And if they really, really, really want something and no one can stop them from taking it, you know what toddlers do? They take it. And I really think this is what's going on with Israel and the West Bank. No one can stop them from taking it. And they are determined to take it. There's no pressure, there's no penalty, there's nothing. They just have to do it in a slow and careful way. But they're doing that. And I think the end game we can see is going to be catastrophic unless someone can stop them and bring back the prospect of a two-state solution, maybe in the form of a confederation. There's nothing wrong with that. But their plan does not involve Palestinian self-determination in Eretz Israel.